Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today y Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're really excited to have you joining us this morning. We have a great show in store for you. Today, we're going to be joined by Dallas Kirby, the owner of DNA Soft Wash and Roof Cleaning, and then later in the show by Nickolas Urpí, the CMO of Emergent Financial Services, who you have seen, I'm sure, on the show before in all his exuberance. So, two exuberant guests that we have for
very much so.
For everyone today. Be sure to like and share. Let us know any comments, any questions that you have for any of our guests. Rosalia Trodaro is already watching. She says, snow in New York, and she is ready to enjoy the show with her espresso. Thank you, Rosalia, for watching today. I mean, I can't think of anything better than to, like, especially with snowing. Yeah. Especially with snowing.
Or a cappuccino.
To be watching
that would be good, too.
Is that a cappuccino?
That lasts a little longer than the espresso, but...
Yeah, but the espresso gives you a little bit more of a...
Boom.
That's a little bit more of a punch. I mean, if you're not awake yet, the espresso will do the trick and wake you up, to be sure. We're always excited to be on the I Love CVille set. We're always presented by Emergent Financial Services, and we are powered by GBS Financial Services, by Vitae Spirits, by Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash, by Sirius Craddock Insurance, and of course by CVille Picnic. And so we're really just excited to partner with them. And of course, we are always with Forward Adelante, the premier Latino networking group here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So a lot going on today.
Yes.
But I'm excited to jump right in.
Oh, me too. I think that would be great.
To our first guest here. So we're really excited to welcome to the show Dallas Kirby. He's the owner of DNA Soft Wash and Roof Cleaning. Dallas, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having us.
So, I mean, I have to start with, well, there's one person I really want to get to, but first I will start with a little bit of, like, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started this company.
Yeah, so it's funny because back in 2010, I had everybody kind of started out with doing lawn care and everything like that. So I picked up a lawnmower, power washer, and everything like that. Started cutting grass, and it was okay. But when I got house washes, my customers would ask me like, "Oh, can you power wash this?" And it was like an instant click. Mm-hmm. You have before and afters, and it's satisfying every time you do it. It's a whole lot of learning involved, though. It's not just go out there with a power washer and blast someone's house away. You can really damage stuff with that. Mm-hmm. So.
Our second guest can attest to what happens if you incorrectly use the power washer.
We do have obviously it's not a commercial power washer, but every once in a while, there's a piece of paint. It's like, wait a minute, how did that happen?
Was that there before?
That's right. Well, that must have been mold on that, I got rid of it, though. Don't worry about it. I got rid of it. So I can attest to that.
So I do have to ask, like, so the soft wash,
yes,
from the name of the company, is that a different thing than power? As someone who knows nothing, is that different from power washing, or is the way you use the power wash?
It's both, actually. You have 3 different ways to wash. You have power washing, pressure washing, and soft washing. Power washing is used with heat, so hot water.
Oh, okay.
Pressure washing is cold water only. And then soft washing, you are using chemicals for your cleaning. And you're not just using one chemical. You have an arsenal. So, every house is different. You're using different chemicals on different stuff. You got to make sure they're biodegradable, though. Plain and simple. You don't want to hurt plants, animals, anything like that. You want to protect it all.
So tell me a little bit something, because one of the things I noticed here in Virginia, because I lived in New York, lived in California, and I lived in Virginia. And granted, New York is also a very humid place.
Yes.
California, we lived closer to the water, so you had the fog come in, so there was some humidity. But I've never seen kind of mold grow on roofs.
Yeah.
Like I see here in Virginia. You put up a brand new roof, it looks great, and then 3 or 4 years later, it's like, I thought it was gray, and it looks kind of blackish and stuff. So tell me a bit about that and how, and how you get, how you clean that and what that is.
So when you see those black streaks on your roof, it's an airborne fungus, Gliocaps and magma. It comes from trees. It comes from moisture in the air. Not a lot of sunlight on your roof or parts of your roof. You'll notice, that either the front has nothing on it, or in the back it's covered, vice versa.
South side, north side, exactly.
And along with like moss and lichen grow. When you have moss and lichen on your roof, your insurance companies actually will not insure your roof.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's eaten away. A lot of your shingles, A lot of older shingles have lime in them, so that's what it's feeding on.
Okay.
Cleaning wise, you never want to use high pressure. It should be like you took a garden hose and sprayed it up there. That should be the most pressure you ever use on a roof.
Wow.
So is it the biodegradable chemicals you use that
Absolutely.
will clean off?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Moss and lichen take a little bit extra time. The black streaks you see, they'll come off that day. Moss and lichen can take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to safely detach from that shingle, because you don't want to be pulling that stuff off.
So you might pull the shingle too.
Pull the shingle, pull the grid off, and then, you know, the homeowner's really upset with you because you just broke the roof. It's pretty dangerous, but applied correctly, it's safe and it will last years.
Now, do you have to get on ladders and get up there?
It all depends on the roof.
Okay.
You know, if it's a real steep roof, obviously you don't want to walk that, but
Yeah.
you do what you have to do. You make sure you're not shooting it underneath the ridge cap or anything like that, getting into someone's attic.
Okay.
The best application is always to let it run down the roof.
Gotcha. So you start
start
from the
at the
top
top
and
and
then let it
Correct.
run down.
Correct.
Wow.
Interesting. So you do roofs. You also do, I guess, sides of houses.
Yes.
So the siding and.
Yep.
And is that like a different process, or is it very similar?
It's similar. Again, we're not using high pressure at all. First thing before any job gets done, though, is property protection. So, you know, cover plants, cover electrical outlets, doors, door locks, which is most people don't think about it, but when water or chemical gets in there, it'll corrode them. You have a hard time getting into your door, cover up everything.
That I did not know.
Property protection is number one, so.
Now, and I'm just thinking of, you know, most homes here.
Yeah.
They have screens, for example, and obviously behind the screens there's the glasses. So sometimes between the screen and the window, there's kind of a
The
ledge.
sill and it's
Yeah.
filled
So
with
do you have to
bugs and dirt.
do you have to take the screens off? Is
Yes.
that the best way?
That is
Okay.
the best way to wash a house,
Yeah.
get the screens off. You know, some windowsills and stuff have little slits in them that it'll drain out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I ask my customers to pull their screens out.
Gotcha.
It just makes a better cleaning and all the way around. And you can clean the screens when they're out too.
Okay. All right. So that's what you're doing. All right. Terrific.
What about like a screened porch? Do you do like
Absolutely.
inside of those? And
Absolutely. And they get really moldy.
I was about
Yeah,
to say,
they- yeah.
those guys that moldy, they're like a magnet for spiders.
Absolutely. Spiders, and then you see all these little black spots on the
Yep.
top. That's, you know, spiders, bugs, everything like that. Especially if you keep your lights on all night long. You notice around the lights, you have
Yep.
more black spots around there and bugs. So that's one thing that you can do to kind of, you know, tame the mold and everything like that is keep those lights off at nighttime when you go to bed.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Keep 'em
Yeah,
off, yep.
That's interesting.
And then what you use also so it protects as well. So like, in other words, it will prevent things from growing there.
Yeah.
For some time after it's been cleaned off as well.
That's correct, because like when you power wash or pressure wash a house without chemicals, you're not killing the mold. You're just kind of pushing it back up underneath the siding or back in corners so it can regrow way faster. When you use algicides and stuff like that, kills it, and you have at least a 2 or 3 year span until you have to clean it
Before
again.
it'll come back.
Oh, algicide. That's the stuff you put in the pool to get rid of the
Sometimes.
Okay.
So the shock, you know, that's obviously every single siding manufacturer and roof, like shingles and stuff, they all recommend chlorine. Every single one. Don't go out there with a pump sprayer and spray straight chlorine on the stuff. You have to know your dilution ratios and everything like that.
Of course.
Soaps are key. Keep your windows from streaking up. Also lets you have a little bit more of a dwell time, so that way the bleach isn't drying on your siding or anything like that. Rinsing is key.
Okay.
Rinse. You can't rinse enough. But you definitely don't want to shoot water underneath siding, because then you'll have little drips and everything like that.
Okay.
And the homeowner gets really upset when you have a nice clean house. All of a sudden you have brown streaks everywhere, and you want to avoid all of that. So.
Wow. So, I mean, so how long would you say do you spend on, I guess every house is different, but let's say it's a typical kind of 3-bedroom house.
Single family,
You know, single
detached.
family. How long does that take?
Maybe 35, 40 minutes.
Wow, that's pretty a lot quicker than I thought. So I mean, so you put the chemicals on, whatever that is, right? You let them sit there for a few minutes, or by the time you finish one side, it's already done.
Well, it all depends. Depends on temperature outside.
Okay.
So if it's real hot, you really want to work just one side at a time instead of coating the whole house, because you don't
Okay.
want it to dry.
Okay.
Colder days, you know, you can work one or two sides at once. and you'll be okay. The main thing though is, make sure those windows get pre-wet, because you don't want to have streaks on those windows at all.
Gotcha.
When you pre-wet them, even using soaps, it'll run off, and that way you don't have to worry about spots or anything like that. There's plenty of window cleaners out there too that will tell you the same thing. They've seen a house wash done and someone didn't know what they were doing. They have to come back, and now the homeowner's spending a lot of money trying to get that hard water off their windows. So,
oh, that's right.
Wow, so much that goes into it that
there's a lot
that I didn't realize, and it is. So, what would you say kind of makes what your company or what you do unique? Like, what do you say is about the way the process goes when someone calls you and is like, Dallas, I need my house cleaned, I need my roof cleaned. How do you sort of work with them?
So, when someone calls me, I try to make it a point to go out to their house and meet them face to face. I don't quote stuff over the phone. Because, if you go to someone's house, you quote it over the phone, you get there, all of a sudden, oh, they got an extra 2,000 square foot garage, and this is damaged here, this is damaged there, and you haven't made contact with the homeowner about this stuff. You're liable for it, you just lost money on it, everything, all the above. And talking with the customer up front about the process is the number one thing, because you're educating the customer. You're not just coming out there to get paid, you're coming out there to educate on what needs to be done to this house, and don't overcharge someone, plain and simple. If you think this doesn't need to be done, but this does, tell the homeowner that. Tell any customer that, everybody in my line of work, we're in it to make money, but we're not in it to rob people.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
You're getting back the value you're putting in. Go ahead.
No, go finish.
No, I was just saying you're getting back what you're getting paid is the value you're providing to someone, and you're not going to provide them something which is actually of no value.
Exactly.
Well, no, and my assumption is that, again, I mean, now that I've lived in Virginia quite a few number of years, I realize that this is going to happen again. In other words, there's no such thing as a miracle. You wash it and it's good, because obviously,
absolutely.
We built our house from scratch. So the fact that this happened to it, you go, well, it was built from scratch. It wasn't an old house that had all these years to grow this mold, right? It's just natural. We do have a lot of trees around our property, so that probably helps a little bit. So, I mean, my assumption is that maybe whether you have to do it every 3 years, right, or 4 years, you don't want to overcharge a client, because if you don't do a good job and you overcharge them, guess what?
Yeah.
3 years from now, they're calling somebody else, right? So
exactly.
That's not what you want.
And plus, if there was a magical chemical that could keep your house clean forever, I would never tell anybody, because I'd be out of business completely. But I don't want one-time customers either, though. Yeah. I want lifetime customers.
Right.
It's customer service is the number one thing in any business, but having a personal relationship with your customers is a whole different ballgame. I have customers that call me and they're like, hey, I need my porch washed because I have a party coming up. I will be there this weekend if I have to. Yeah. I'll figure out a day to do it.
Exactly. See, how many times do we talk about that, right? I mean, the nice thing about our show is we have entrepreneurs like yourself that have small businesses, and the two things that always come out is one, the passion that they have for their business, and two, the service. And we always say that the nice, beautiful thing about small businesses is the service.
Absolutely.
And as you mentioned, you get to meet the client, you talk to them, they see you face to face, they know who's going to be in the job, and they know who's going to do their work, and in the end, that makes the homeowner or the client feel so much more comfortable that they know the person. And as you said, you call Dallas and you say, I hate to do this for you, but this weekend I'm going to have a party. Anytime you can come out, and boy, you know that he says, I'll find a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Other companies say, well, in about a month I'll find a way, So that's good, yeah.
And there are a lot of really good power washing companies in Central Virginia. I'm friends with quite a few of them, and there's plenty of houses out there for every single person to have a house to wash. Do I want to be better? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of like a dysfunctional family, though, I'll tell you that much. We'll piggyback off each other sometimes. If I have advice or they have advice, we'll take it in a heartbeat. Because at the end of the day, the customer is number one, always.
Absolutely.
Always.
No, that's great. That's great to hear that.
Which is the beauty, I think, of the small business owner. It really is. It's you and your customers.
Yep.
That are making this relationship. It's not corporate this corporate branch, do this, get these customers, do that, do this, corporate says you got to do this. No, it's you're calling the shots.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing about, about business that most people don't realize is that most of the time, business is not finite, right? In other words, it's not such a thing as that. Here's the piece of pie, and if everybody's had a piece of the pie, then you can't come in anymore. No, the fact is that there's, as you mentioned, there's lots of houses, more houses being built, right? And sometimes homeowners move, somebody else comes in, and you have an opportunity anyway to say, hey, you know what? I've cleaned this house before. Here's what I do. Is how I do it, and there's enough work for good quality, services, and that's the key, though.
Yeah.
It's good quality. If you're lousy, yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that when you said that they moved. So I worked the whole state of Virginia.
Wow.
The entire state. When people move, I like it that they call me wherever they move in the state of Virginia. We'll go up to Fredericksburg, Norfolk, Lynchburg, anywhere in the state of Virginia, and these are customers that I've had before. And that's where the small business aspect comes into play, because that is your lifetime customer at that point.
That's interesting. Wow. That's that's a lot of traveling, Dallas. Holy.
It is. I get criticized sometimes by some of the bigger guys in my industry. They're like, oh, is it really worth you driving 2.5 hours for one house? Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely, because if it makes them happy, I got the business as well. That word of mouth, I can get more houses as well.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So would you say word of mouth is probably the number one way that you you've been growing as a company?
Absolutely. I would probably say 85 to 90% of my business is word of mouth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is, I've always found that that's the best way. Because that's kind of that trust factor already being built. Because when someone says, "Hey, use Dallas, he's good,"
and that is the pure truth coming out of someone's mouth too. Because I can advertise all day long on the radio, social media, and everything like that. But when a customer tells another person, like, "Hey, this guy did a great job," that solidifies the work at that point.
Absolutely. You got a lot of fans that are liking you today. You got Amy Benson, Kelly Weaver.
Oh yeah, yep.
Trevor, Gene, Jennifer.
Trevor Chisholm. He's a power washer here in Charlottesville too. So
nice. Jennifer Thacker.
Oh yeah.
James Rouse and Josh and Amanda Jones.
Fantastic.
All liked the Dallas Kirby on Today Mañana show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching, you guys. Really appreciate it. They are loving it. Chad Wood is saying, "Good work, Dallas."
My man.
Trevor goes, "Awesome, bro." And Josh and Amanda saying, "Dallas also always finds a way to help his community around him. Great guy."
That's awesome.
That's also important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you can just see that. Just by meeting Dallas, you see he's got that charisma, that character, that energy. Kind of fits well. And this is.
Well, thank you.
This is good. This is. It's a learning process, and in everything we do, we realize that we learn a lot by people like you that come in and tell us a little bit about the business, how it works,
exactly,
the challenges, and what you do, and. Do you find so what happens in a situation? Let's say you're ready to roll, and the day comes and it's pouring. Can you still do it on a pouring day, or is it?
I don't.
Okay.
You won't get the best result.
Yeah.
Your chemical's not really working that well. It's just I would rather hold off and have a perfect job done rather than halfway doing it.
Yeah. So the weather's in your case is really critical.
It is, and there's a lot of people out there that say you can wash in the rain. It helps rinse. My personal opinion, I just don't think you get that good of a job at the end of the day. So,
yeah.
But
I guess if you're power washing with just cold water, it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah,
right?
you'd be fine with that. You can do concrete
helping.
and stuff, concrete and brick and everything.
Okay.
But definitely not doing a house or a roof.
Yeah.
Not doing a roof at all in the rain.
Now, so most houses that you clean, so even brick homes, so you do those also?
I do.
Because it's funny, I pass by a brick home and you don't really see the grime as much, maybe.
Normally on a brick house, you're going to see the grime and mold and red clay stains at the base of the house.
Okay.
On brick homes, you're really looking at the soffits, your gutter lines, front entryways. That's normally the dirtiest part of the house, except for that baseline of the house. If people don't have landscape around, they have all that red clay coming up.
Yeah.
Power washing is not going to take that off alone. You're using special chemicals. I don't use any acids though. You can use acids. I'm just not partial to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do pretty much every single thing exterior cleaning wise.
Wow. Now, do you find that sometimes if you clean, let's say they have just regular siding, and you wash the house, does the house then look like it's been recently painted?
In most cases, yeah. I have a couple painters I contract for, and I've done some porches and, soffits and stuff where they thought they had to be painted. All of a sudden, they're like, man, I don't have to paint this now.
Doesn't need to be painted anymore.
Sorry, man, I didn't mean to.
You tossed me my painting.
Yeah, sometimes it happens.
Wow. On the entrepreneur side, I'm just curious, what's been your experience like on what goes on? I mean, we talk with people a lot of times and how there's a lot that goes on having a business that's not just the part where you actually do what you do.
Exactly.
What's been your experience with that?
I eat it up. My phone rings, especially in the spring, summertime. My phone will start ringing 5:30 in the morning and probably doesn't stop till about 10 o'clock at night. That doesn't include your emails, Facebook messages, everything like that. That's probably the biggest challenge is staying caught up within a timely manner with the customers. Don't let it go a couple hours.
No.
Call them back as soon as you can. Even if you're in bad sell range, get to a good sell spot. Stop your vehicle, do whatever you have to do. Make contact with that customer. That's probably the hardest part of business.
I would imagine.
And I can vouch for that because I know that how we got in contact with you was really, so we were on the, Keith Smith has a show called Real Talk. And so I asked him, I said, hey, I need to power wash my house. And do you know somebody? He says, I can't remember his name, but he had your phone, right? And he texted it to Alex.
Yep. Me.
And I know you called Alex. And
then I texted you,
and then you texted me his
number.
and it was like, wow, this guy's like bang bang.
Fat.
Within minutes, it's like, so it's true. You do what you say you do.
Yeah,
I can vouch for that part at least.
Which really is teaches. Especially in probably what I'm guessing is a competitive line of business. People are like, well, I'm going to call 3 guys.
Absolutely.
And whoever calls me back first, there's a chance they might get my business.
Absolutely. I actually just did a quote last week where they had 4 different companies come out.
Interesting.
And it's just the nature of the business. People want to shop.
Yeah.
I tell my customers up front, I'm not going to be the cheapest one out here, plain and simple. I price myself on the quality of work, not on what I think is comfortable. Is it affordable? Absolutely. But I'm not going to be, I'll do your whole house for $50. Not a chance. Not a chance. Between fuel, insurance, workman's comp, all that stuff, you have to have a minimum. But, you're going to lose jobs. You're not going to get every single house. Plain and simple. I don't want every single house. Because that means you're going to start shortchanging work on other homes. You want to really, I guess the word is, kind of pace yourself.
Yep. Well, I think it's one of the major lessons of entrepreneurship that you tend to learn as an entrepreneur. I remember when we first started in our business, someone in a similar line of business said, oh yeah, we had to fire a client recently. And me, fresh out of college, was like, what do you mean fire a client? I would never fire, you never fire a client. Don't they fire you? And they're like, no. There are times when it's like you realize as an entrepreneur to do the best work that you have to do. Sometimes that means you don't get every job, and that's okay. That's not doesn't mean that you're doing a poor job. In fact, it could mean you're doing an excellent job, and it's just you're beyond someone's price point. They're looking for something that's a different price point because maybe they don't need or recognize the value that you're providing right now.
And that was the hardest pill for me to swallow when I first got started. I wanted every single job out there, and I got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna price this super cheap because I want to do this job. And it was addicting because I was like, man, I need to have all these houses here. Now it's to the point where it's like, there's plenty of other guys out here, but this is my quality of work that I can produce. So it's up to you.
Yeah, well, you know what it is. It's at the end of the month when you do your balance sheet and you go, wow, I did, 30 houses this month. And it's like, but I'm losing money. Wait a minute, there's something wrong here. That's not how it's supposed to be.
It's one of the major lessons that they teach at CIC when they do the 16-week entrepreneurship class. It's because so many people, they want to be a small business owner, and they'll look at their numbers and say, "You're going to go out of business in 2 years if you charge these prices." Like don't be afraid to charge what you are actually worth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's important, right? Because if you are very good at what you do, right, you can charge, a good value, and people will recognize that. So, he's not the cheapest, but boy, oh boy, I mean, the job he does can't be beat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's your worth.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, before I close it, I have one more question that I always close out with, but I want to read a comment here from Doug Seatrest, current customer. Dallas does great work, and they truly do have wonderful customer service. We have used them several times and recommended to all of our friends.
Thank you, Doug.
So you've got some big fans,
That's awesome.
which is not surprising.
That makes my day right there.
Not surprising. Yeah, a couple others. We got Christopher says Dallas is the man.
Thank
Ginger
you, sir.
Tibb says awesome Dallas. And then 2 Dallas is the mans. You got Ray Cameron also
Yes.
saying Dallas
Yes,
is the
that's
man.
what I like to
So I
do
think
right
the
there.
man is really our number one adjective of today.
I'll
that
take it.
Dallas
I'll take it.
Is the man. So where can people, I always ask this, where can people find you, get in touch with you? What's the best way?
So I actually just had a website finished. Turned out really nice. But mainly, Facebook. Honestly.
Facebook.
I have not advertised really my entire career. So people reach me out through Facebook, I have my phone number on there, my email on there. Any form of communication is fine. Again, I have my phone on me 24/7. My phone is blowing up right now, so
There you go.
it's a good thing. I'll get back to whoever's calling me, just to let you know.
He will.
Yeah.
He will absolutely get back to you. Fantastic. So DNA Soft Wash, very easy to find.
Yes, sir.
On Facebook. I mean, if you're watching the show, literally you can click. If we have tagged DNA Soft Wash and Roof Cleaning on our Facebook page, so you can just click that link. It will take you right there. But if you're watching this later on or listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just go to Facebook, type in DNA Soft Wash, and it will take you to DNA Soft Wash and Roof Cleaning.
Yes.
Dallas, this has been so much fun.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's
so
been
much
great.
for joining
Thanks so
us
much.
today.
Really appreciate it.
Really fantastic. I love the passion, and I love the entrepreneurship and the way the knowledge that you have of what you do is just really impressive.
Well, I
And
appreciate
the
that.
advertiser, look at that. He's got this.
Absolutely.
What do you
I
mean
love
you
it.
don't
I
advertise?
love that
Right here,
shirt, yes.
DNA. He's advertising.
Yeah, the
I
style.
love
This is the winter shirt. It's supposed to make you feel warm and cozy inside.
It's working. It's working. It also kind of makes me wish I was in like Hawaii.
Oh,
or
me too,
something like
trust
that.
me.
You know, it's
I'm
like-
with
it. Bermuda, Hawaii,
Yeah.
Puerto Rico,
I
anywhere.
know that's what I'm in Puerto Rico. It's like, hold on, I want to go
Yes.
to Puerto Rico now.
I'm on the way.
Nickolas just shared DNA Soft Wash and Roof Cleaning in the comment section. So thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
You can just click that and it'll take you right there.
Beautiful.
Dallas, thanks again for joining us. It's a
Thank you,
pleasure.
guys.
Thank you, Dallas. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Always love it. And we're just going to do, as we do our little swapperoo here,
That's right.
just really appreciate everyone
With the CMO.
for the comments. Yeah, let us know. Be sure to check out Dallas. That was really, I didn't even know some of those things.
No, me neither. Me neither. This is great.
Power
Yeah.
washing and
Yeah.
what that works. I mean, to be honest, now I know what we've been doing wrong when we try to DIY it all these years.
Well, we weren't doing the whole
That's why-
house. Let's be
We weren't
honest.
doing the whole
We were
house.
just doing the floor, the porch, and
Yeah,
it comes out clean enough.
Yeah, but then we wonder why the mold
But-
never goes away. We're like, oh,
Well,
that might have something to do with it.
After Dallas does that, then they'll
that-
look really good. I'll
that's
tell a few
fair.
people, yeah, I helped
Your
out.
mistake was that you used free labor. You just didn't know what it was doing.
You got what you
And the
paid
floor-
for.
It wasn't free labor, it was lousy labor. is what
Yeah,
I'm
it
saying.
was also free. I didn't see
It wasn't free.
It was room and board, yeah. We got
wasn't
room
free.
and board
That's
for
I
that.
give you guys a nice steak at the end of
No,
the
you
day.
did not. That is all. That is
I thought I
not
did.
true. A nice
looked-
steak.
I thought I
If you had promised a nice steak, we might have done it better.
He might have done a better job.
I might have done a better job.
Yeah.
At that point,
bummer.
we got some more viewers. We got Elizabeth Miller watching the show today. Thanks for watching, Elizabeth. Always fun to have everyone from different places. Jeannie Bradshaw watching the show says amazing job. So pleased, I think, for Dallas. Thanks for watching the show today,
Absolutely,
Jeannie.
yeah.
Fantastic. So I mean, for those who don't know him, we're excited to welcome to the
back.
show the CMO of Emergent
Emergent
Financial
Financial
Services, Nickolas Urpí, also known as SMJ, what was social media ninja? SMN.
Oh, okay.
Social
I was gonna say-
media ninja.
Where's the J?
Social media ninja. I was in the J and ninja.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk a little shop. Here's our finance topic for today. So I mean, Xavier, you've got some things I know that have been in your mind, on your mind, that you'd like to talk about?
Because the markets, it's amazing, right? When all of a sudden the markets, and for whatever reason, the year is a new year, and people say, okay, so December 31st ended the past year, now we're a new year, what's going on, right? And it's like, that's not real. The markets they don't really aren't timed by the calendar, right? I mean, things happen for different reasons at different times, but certainly, starting this year, but we began to see
in December. December was not what you would have expected, given that you usually have the Santa rally. Last week of December was already looking a little choppy.
And the second half of last year was really much weaker than the first half of last year, right? But without any doubt, this year has started with a kind of a big bang in the opposite direction. But again, there are certain sectors that have just gotten demolished, right? And by that, I mean, so there are sectors that are down about 10, 12, 13%. Certainly the technology sector, the biotech sector, they're down 13, 14%. I think NASDAQ is down about 8%. But if you look at the value sector, it's only down about 1%. Large cap stocks. So again, is why we talk about the diversification process, right? And we also talk about, and then I'll get to something that I really want to talk about, but we also talk about the asset allocation, right? And how to, what is it that you need to do about
asset allocation being like when you have your investment portfolio, you have different percentages of it in different types of assets, stocks, bonds, U.S.
and
stocks,
different kind of stocks,
emerging market stocks,
right.
small
large cap stocks,
large cap stocks.
Exactly. And so when you create a portfolio that is well diversified, right? Some will be going up, some may be going down, some will be stable. And the concept is you need to reallocate. In other words, you created an allocation based on your goals, on your expectations, so your needs, right? And so you want to make sure that percentage within each particular sector remains where it is over the long run. So if something goes up about 10% and something went down 10%, obviously now your allocation to that sector is skewed. But it's exactly what you're looking for, right? So again, this is probably, and again, for whatever reason, a lot of portfolio managers kind of wait till the end of the year. Let's look at asset allocation. Where are we? Do we need to do anything? And it's not the way to do business.
It's treated as a calendar year, even though really there's no logical reason why it should be.
Absolutely. So the key is we're sitting here now with, again, technology stocks down about 14%. You look at ETFs like iClean and the Kathy Wood's ARK. I forget
ARK Investments.
ARK Investments. They're down 13, 14%, right? And again, then you look at other ETFs and good quality, large value stocks that are down 1%. Well, it's beginning to make sense and say,
do a little rebalancing.
Exactly. Do I need to sell some of and maybe even bonds? Some bonds, bonds are down only about 0.5% in most short-term ETFs, for example. Things are 0 to 5 year treasuries or 1 to 3 year treasuries or 0 to 5 year corporate bonds. They're only down about 0.5% to 1%, right? So it's a great time to say, okay, we need to begin thinking about, do we want to reallocate some of those funds into the technology stocks because you're selling something that, it's still down a little bit, but it's held on to its value pretty well, right? And I'm only talking within, these past 3 weeks. I'm not even talking about the last 12 months, right? So it's held its value pretty well in 3 weeks, but it's time to reallocate. I mean, if something's down 14% and something's down only 1%, it's not a bad time to reallocate. Do a little reallocation, right? And just sit there and see what happens. I mean, if it happens again, reallocate again. And then just once that happens, just let it grow. And the beauty about that is that it forces you to begin to think about, there are sectors that do well in certain time periods and others don't. But as you begin to shift that money, right, eventually that other sector, the technology, the biotechs will do very well, right? And you're already there. Yeah. You can't just sit there in your portfolio and just let things go up and down and not even think about it.
You need to monitor it.
Because,
and again, you're not really changing the percentages that are your targets. That's the beauty of the rebalancing, right? You're not put in a position, it's not as though you have to decide what you think is going to do well and what you think is not going to. It's not a matter of saying, 20% of my portfolio is small cap stocks, tech stocks that aren't really hammered right now. I only want that to be 5 now because they're doing really poorly, or I got to up that to 50 because they're doing poorly. No, you have a target of 20%, let's say, in tech stocks. When those tech stocks now are 10% of your portfolio because they've gone down in value, you know what you need to get back to. You know that you have to buy some to get back to 20%. You're not putting yourself in a position where you now have to pick and choose, how much of my portfolio do I want to be in tech this year? How much do I want to be in value? No. You've got your targets. You know that these targets are appropriate for you because you've decided that based on the risk level you want to take. And now all you're doing is saying, the market, because of what's going on, because tech stocks have done much more poorly than value stocks, the market has sort of made your decision for you. The market has made it clear by changing the percent of these stocks within your portfolio. Sell one, buy the other. You're selling high, buying low each time you do this without putting yourself in the position of trying to have to guess what's going to do well in the next year. Because that's the beauty of the rebalancing, right? We're not sitting here saying that tech is going to do better than value this year. It could be that value does better than tech in 2022 again, right? In which case, 6 months from now, you'll just be buying more tech.
That's right.
Because it will have gone down in value again, and you'll put more in them. But the point is that we know, the one thing we do know is that tech is not going to do poorly forever. No asset class goes all the way to zero. It's not like we've reached a point where we're going to hit like the dark ages and suddenly we will never buy tech again, right? At some point, it will come back. So the beauty of the rebalancing process is that you don't have to worry about what you predict will happen this year. It doesn't matter. If tech comes back and does better than value, you'll be glad that you rebalanced. If tech does poorly and there's even more of a discrepancy, it's just another opportunity to rebalance again. And at some point, that will reverse, and then you'll be glad that you rebalanced.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, I mean, the key is, because some people say, well, if I had stayed in value then, wouldn't I have made more money? And the answer is yes. However, you also have to... Yes.
Only in the short term.
Exactly. And you have to think about long term, what was your expectation of returns? I mean, so in other words, if you have a plan that over the next 5 to 10 years, you'd like to get 7% return on your portfolio, you've created a portfolio that over that time period, you expect to get that. Some year you may get 12, 13%. The next year you may get 4 or 5%. The idea though is that that's the portfolio that that structure, that balance, that's going to provide you that type of return based on the information that you have, and there's just a lot of analysis that go into choosing that.
And again, one of the big mistakes, and here you to jump in, Nick, I mean, I know you know this as well. One of the big mistakes you can make is to chase returns. It's one of the biggest behavioral mistakes people make. He did well last year, I'm going to go buy some of that.
Well, because one of the things I was going to say is, because you mentioned iClean, which is the iShares Green Energy ETF, and I pulled up just to see, because as of, I think by the time 2020 ended, Plug Power was, I think if I'm correct, either their number 1 or number 2 holding, right?
In that ETF.
In the ETF. Now, let's understand that when Plug Power early in 2020 started becoming a millennial hot stock, it was priced at $7. It went up to $60 and while it had some success, some new contracts, things like that, it was not yet necessarily making money to the degree like you would expect a $60 stock to be making, right? It wasn't an established, but it's still growing as a business. So, and we've seen that a lot of the failure of these big ETFs to maintain the returns is the fact that a lot of these top holdings that kind of skyrocketed are kind of trickling down, because just to check, Plug Power right now, as of today, is $23. And now Morgan Stanley is saying that they're underpriced. So you're seeing these millennial stock, right? It's a millennial stock. It pops up to 60 and trickles down all through all 2021. Now we're getting to the point where now we're seeing a price that is matching what this stock, or roughly where the stock should be.
on the low side of what the stock should be if
Right,
Morgan Stanley
I mean,
analysts should be believed.
Again, obviously Morgan
Obviously, it's
Stanley's
one
one
analyst.
opinion, right? It's not an
You'll
analyst. I'm
find
sure they have a
somebody-
whole team that came to this conclusion.
You'll find somebody else saying it's overpriced.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess the whole point is that now we're getting into that area where is it underpriced? Is it overpriced? That's probably where you're going to see like, okay, this is where it roughly should be as of today. And then in the future, you could make the decision whether or not, those kind of stocks will go up. But the whole point is like seeing it retreat from $60 from last year over an entire year. It's not because the stock was bad. It's just that it became so popular so quickly with all the stimulus money that it was just one of the things that it was bound to happen. And so, of course, something like that is going to drag down
The
your
returns to the
ETFs.
ETF. But it may end up putting the ETF or just the market as a whole in a healthier place. In other words,
Right.
you think of the S&P 500 dominated by the big FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Google, Alphabet, Netflix, right? Those
That's
things,
not FANG,
at some point, they reached what?
Where's the income from?
Oh, that's
At
right.
some point, they reached what, 25-30% of that entire market cap weighted
Right.
index,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
For those, if those were to come down this year, right, or underperform relative to the rest of the S&P 500, yes, would the return of the S&P 500 maybe be dragged down a little bit by that? Probably. But you may end up with a slightly healthier S&P 500 in which when you buy that ETF, that S&P 500 ETF, you have exposure to a lot of stocks, not that you really have exposure to 5 stocks.
Right.
And you're going up and down on the basis of those 5. So it's not always a bad thing when these things happen. It gives you, just as you're rebalancing, in some ways the ETF that you're following, because they are market cap weighted, are rebalancing as well. They're not going to own as much plug power. Buying iClean at the beginning of 2022, you're not going to own as much plug power as you would at the beginning of 2021.
Right.
And that may not necessarily be a bad thing, because you'll own a higher percentage of a lot of other stocks that may do well this year.
Exactly, and we talk about that all the time. That really, these type of whether you want to call them corrections or market downturns.
Well, Nasdaq, I think did Nasdaq hit correction territory yesterday?
Yeah, no
think
doubt
it
about
did.
it. Yeah, well, it's
One of them, one of the major indices.
Yeah,
finally
Nasdaq was down about 9% so far.
Yeah, so probably hit correction territory.
Yeah, so those are healthy for the market, because sooner or later, if you go back historically, markets just don't go up straight, right? And I know people will say, "Oh, what's going on with the market? It's not going up." Well, that's if you go back
It's
in
totally
time, you
normal.
said that always happens, right? There are times when the market goes down, whether it be 5% or 10%, and those are opportunities. You have to look at them as opportunities to say, if you have some cash, or hopefully you've accumulated some cash from dividends, or maybe there's money that you need to put in because you want to put some money into your IRA or your Roth or your 401k, there are opportunities to say, this is now a good time to reinvest some of those assets into the market because it's down about 10%, right? So again, you have to look at it from that perspective, and as I said, it's healthy. And let's be honest. I mean, it's just like the economy. The economy doesn't just keep growing at 3 to 5% per annum forever. There are times when the economy grows at 2%, 7%, rarely anymore, but and then goes down,
And then it goes
right?
down.
And so that happens, right?
So economy's correct. I mean, the one is we talk about whenever we say the market, everyone generally means the stock market, but we know from economics the market is
It's also the economy.
the entirety of traded goods and services, including the black market, which needs to be included there because it is true. And it's going to go up and down because that's what happens. Prices have to adjust and evaluate.
That's a great ETF, a black market ETF.
Ah, man, I wish.
That'd be
That would
great.
that would be rather difficult
Forget
to invest
it.
in.
Yeah, no, I wish I could though. A black market ETF.
We got to come up with that. I mean,
Find a way.
We'll be a little. I'd rather stay above the table.
but anyway, so
So
what
I know you had another.
The money's made on.
Yeah, and we've been talking for. It's funny. We've been talking for 15 minutes, and now we're getting to the topic you
Yeah,
really wanted to
no,
talk
it wasn't
about.
so much a topic.
At
I
the
just-
end of your thing, I was going to say, is there a question in there? 'Cause
No,
you
it wasn't so
supposedly
much a topic, but let's be honest. I mean, what's causing the market to have this indigestion? I mean, sometimes it's always true, right? That it's not just, well, stocks are too high, therefore they come down. There's something, right? And I don't think I would overstate the fact that there are two things that are in people's mind. One is inflation, right? I mean,
Right.
when the newspaper keeps telling you that the inflation numbers are the highest in 40 years and it's not transitory, and Powell comes out and says, well, we maybe misused the word.
Yeah.
Maybe I made a little
and then,
mistake.
And so, and then you have the administration saying that's not their job. It's the job of the Federal Reserve to fix inflation.
I'm sure Powell
all that
loved-
causes.
I'm sure Powell loved to
Powell's
hear that.
delighted about that. All that causes you to say, some of these stocks are going to be challenged, right? Because we have inflation, we have very low interest rates. The expectation is that the Fed's going to raise rates, right? And so we've always talked about the fact that, the world is now one big world. Whether some of us like it or not, right?
It's a
we are
global
part.
economy.
It's a global economy. It's a global world, and people speak to each other. So as you know, they're having in Davos, all the big guns out there, and so President Xi, and I'm gonna quote what he said, right? Because there's no way I can memorize everything he said, but this is so interesting. He told Chairman Powell to please don't lift interest rates, right? He said, if major economies slam on the brakes or take a U-turn in their monetary policies, the U.S. Fed, there would be serious negative spillovers. They would present challenges to global economic and financial stability, and developing countries would bear the brunt of it, right? So this is Xi, and he said that on Monday. Of course, we all know that President Xi is the Chinese president, and who do we import the most from? China. China first, like 450 billion. I think it's Mexico second.
Right.
But
expansionary monetary policy, which is what we've had, right, means a weak dollar, which means things we buy from China make China a lot of money.
absolutely.
Tightening monetary policy usually results in a stronger dollar, which conversely results in a weaker yuan or renminbi, which therefore means everything China sells to us makes them a little bit less money.
Right.
So there's all these interplays of.
So just think about that. I mean, in other words, there's pressure on one side saying, inflation's running rampant in the U.S. You need to raise rates in order to at least show the investing world that you're thinking about it and are putting some effort into maybe reducing that pressure, right? And then you have the other side of the world saying, you guys can't raise rates. You got to be crazy. I mean, you're going to destroy the economies around the world, and the Fed should be saying, and. I mean, it's like, wait a minute. Whose economy are we supposed to be worried about?
I think you could argue from a cynical. Go ahead.
I was going to say implication. The implication is that, like, if you go down a path of inflation to the point of hyperinflation, and the entire U.S. economy does collapse, it would be a lot worse for China than if we just temporarily raised rates in small amounts to try to curtail it.
Well, I think the issue is
But
hyperinflation went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't do anything to stop it, it just gets worse and worse.
We'll let Alex give us his.
I'm thinking, I think President Xi probably knows what I'm sure the Federal Reserve knows and just will not admit, which is that the rate raising that would have to happen, the increase in rates that would have to happen to actually curtail the inflation that we're seeing is much greater than a couple 25 basis point rate hikes. I mean, if you've got inflation running at 9%, you're not going to somehow claw back inflation by raising rates 0.75% in a year.
Well, it depends on how much you're trying to get it down to, because remember, they're going for the average of 2%.
Yeah.
So they just got
9 to 2 is
9 to 2 is a lot, but the whole point is
No,
it depends on have they even given us because remember they said an average, right? But they never gave the time
Yeah, I know, but
span.
no,
so
what I'm saying
they're
is you
including
have
the
to
past
at least-
10 years.
I know, but you need to at least raise rates beyond the point of inflation to even bring it down.
Right.
You can't. What I'm saying is you can't bring down, and I think the Federal Reserve knows this, and I think President Xi probably his advisors know this as well. You can't bring down 9% inflation by raising rates, even if they push them up to 1%. You can't bring down 9% inflation by raising rates to 1%. When we had inflation that was running, if you think about it, you realize inflation probably wasn't even running this high in the 1970s. When they spiked those interest rates. Because, I mean, if you're talking about the first in 40 years, I mean, this is probably what we're talking about.
Exactly, 1970s, yeah.
So you realize to kill 9% inflation in the 1970s, where did they raise interest rates? 15%. You need to go higher. You need to go past the point of inflation. In other words, your rates, some of your rates need to actually be higher than the inflation rate to claw that thing back.
Well,
you can't say, well, if I raise rates a little, inflation will come down a little. It doesn't work that way.
To counter you, though, aren't you the one who always says that inflation is mostly consumer-driven, like consumer behavior-driven?
Well,
So the fact that everyone freaks out about...
No. The contagion can be consumer-driven. This inflation,
Okay, gotcha.
the origin of this inflation is supply side. We all know that,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And labor
and
side.
labor.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that you can enter those cycles in which the expectation of inflation causes people to behave in inflationary manners. But what I'm saying is if you even believe that monetary policy, what the Fed does, can curtail this inflation, then the only way it happens is by raising rates beyond the point of inflation.
So my question to you guys, though, is really, if the Fed begins to raise rates, which inflation are they looking to control? Are they looking to control the inflation we've seen in the stock market, or are they looking to control the inflation that we've seen, which is supply side?
They want the stock market to go up. They've mentioned,
Oh, yeah,
like,
they don't care about stock market
the
inflation.
chairman...
Them raising rates impacts the stock market. We've already said that from 2008 on,
That's
when
why
they
they're so
basically
hesitant.
massively injected, we've injected cash into the system. I mean, from a less than $1 trillion balance sheet to $9 trillion is a lot of money that went, and where did it go?
Well,
right?
I got a quick...
So it went to the stock market.
What was the name of that guy? That was the second-headed chairman below Yellen, Steve something. I think he was like the second. It was like the vice president of when Yellen was in charge. I can't remember his name, but there was somebody who did an analysis of the way he talked, right, of the things he said in interviews, which most people did not see. And one of the things they noted was that in his conversation, he made it seem as he basically implied that the Federal Reserve is no longer concerned about people who save money. They are concerned with investors, and that the Federal Reserve can, and I'm trying to use my words very carefully because I remember he said something very, very, very interesting that was basically his implication was that the word choice of the Federal Reserve was all that was necessary to make changes in the economy, and that they didn't even have to, for most of the time at this point in the economy, do anything because what they said would have much more of an impact than what they did. So they don't have. So it was very interesting because it revealed two things. One, that their priority is not people who save money in their bank accounts. It's people who invest money in the stock market. It's not. I mean, unless the average American gets in the stock market, but the markets is what they're concerned about. And number two, that they're interested in making wordplay.
Which is why they're in such a bind now, because they're discovering wordplay does not.
It doesn't work. You can't have magic.
Well, there's two things. Eventually, you have to act, right? In other words, that is true, but that's been going on for a long time now, right? The minute the Fed says we're thinking of doing this, boom, the market reacts. After a while, it's like, wait a minute, they keep saying, but they never do anything about it, right? And that's going to wane. In other words, that clout wanes. Second of all, so when you say investors, here's my issue, right? In other words, who are investors? Well, what are investors? I mean, we are all investors, whether we think of it or not. Every single mom and pop that puts money into a 401k is an investor.
Right.
So the Fidelities of the world, the Schwabs of the world that have target date funds, those are investors.
Those are investors.
Pension plans, corporations that have pension plans, those are investors. Those are people that's their retirement. So literally, all investors are invested in the market. The issue I have is that when you finally retire, right, and are looking for safety, you can no longer find return in the marketplace, and that's whom they've hurt, right? Because the retiree who now says, I'm done, I no longer want to work, I will no longer have income, Social Security doesn't meet my needs, I need to pull out of my retirement. If they need to be pulling out their retirement at 5-6%, including principal, right? They're not going to last. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
Their funds don't last as long as if interest rates 4
converting
5-6%.
it to cash flow is much more difficult
Well, and
now.
the issue is every year that inflation runs this much higher than safe return. So in other words, the person who just retired at 70 cannot be sticking his money into tech stocks, hoping that tech stocks give him a 10% return. This way he can outpace inflation. That's a recipe for disaster.
Especially
Because
if,
then you
if
hit
he has
this
to
year
pull
and now,
principal is the
yeah,
problem.
especially if, if you're hoping on TETS return, you're pulling principal is what you're doing because there's no income coming in.
Right.
They need to rely on income generating, typically bonds. I mean, if bonds are nowhere close to, every year that bonds rich yields run nowhere close to inflation, you are killing that person's investment.
Think about it. The
You're killing
average
that person's
inflation rate,
retirement.
if you take the average of the CPI and the PPI, so the PPI was over 9%, the CPI was 6.8,
6.8,
right?
yeah.
That's like an 8.5 average. That's the number that's always in my head when I look at those numbers is this is what I need to earn for the clients for them to stay
Where's
at least
the retiree
equal.
to earn that?
That's right.
Because
It's
But real estate is not fungible. In
but
other
real
words, that's the
estate's
same
difficult
thing,
to
right? In
pull
other
out.
words, is the cash flow in real estate. It's great as a long-term investment, but if you just retired and you're looking for cash flow on a monthly basis,
Unless it's rent rolls.
yeah, but that means you have to own two locations, you'd have to
should-
sacrifice
the
and
point
take one
is,
out.
that's real estate. That means you already have to have that real estate. If you're looking to buy it now, you're in trouble, right?
yeah, it's
I mean,
historically it was bonds. Then for a while it got pushed into retirees got pushed into value stocks, dividend paying stocks. Now dividend paying stocks aren't even coming anywhere close
yeah.
to this. I mean, dividend stocks worked when inflation was running at 0, right? And you were getting paid 3%, 2 to 3% dividend stocks. All right, you can kind of make that work. But now if inflation is running at 8, no stock is going to pay you. I mean, the stocks you need to be in as seniors are not going to pay you 8% dividends.
Yeah. I mean, there are investments, and we know, obviously, through the closed-end mutual funds
closed-end
that
mutual funds.
will generate that. But you have to be cognizant of the fact that that interest, that yield, first of all, that yield may change, right? But that yield has to suffice your needs. Because, again, if you're pulling on principal, that doesn't mean the underlying
your
market
money.
value of those funds aren't going to go up and down. But there are ways, right?
I would
but
say
my
the
issue,
Social Security also does not pace with inflation.
No.
Not even.
It lags about
historically,
half.
it lasts about 0.5%. So again, one of the things is in higher inflation levels that
Plus,
it
remember,
aggravates the
Social Security
difference.
follows CPI, and I think they've done studies that the rate of inflation faced by seniors tends to run higher than CPI. So Social Security will never keep up with the actual inflation rate of the basket of goods that seniors tend to purchase.
Right.
because most of that is what? Food, right?
Well,
energy,
food,
gas.
energy,
And
gas.
all that goes up a lot more.
All those that goes up more than
Exactly,
CPI.
exactly. Because we know CPI is influenced by
Massaged,
tech, right?
yeah.
And as you mentioned before, all of a sudden it's like with that television, 20 years ago cost $1,000, but if you buy that today, it's $100. Therefore, this inflation.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, it's only worth $100.
I mean, technology
But you
has
don't
been
buy
one of
that
the biggest
television anymore.
things
Now
that-
you're still buying a television that worth $1,000 or more, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
that's a whole different story.
It's a whole different one.
Yeah.
But again, going back to what you mentioned about the global pressure, right? So I think the issue is, let's face it, President Xi knows darn well that what the Federal Reserve would have to contemplate to actually claw back this inflation will cause a very large increase, right, in the value of the dollar relative to these, and especially if you're talking, remember, interest rates going up for the rest of the world that's borrowing in dollars is very bad as well.
True.
For them. So he's looking at this and saying, I don't think he cares about the developing nations. I'm just saying, I don't think he's
No,
actually.
you kidding me?
Yeah, shocking as that may sound, I don't think President Xi loses any sleep over whether Vietnam is doing all right or not. But I think just from a pure Chinese perspective, just remember the Chinese own a lot of U.S. debt as well.
Huge
He's
lot.
sitting there saying, I don't want to be paying more in interest rates. And I'm sure he's thinking that. The Japanese, even if they wouldn't come out and say it, are probably thinking that. A lot of these other nations that do their debt, that they do a lot of transactions in U.S. debt, right, are sitting there saying, geez, if the Federal Reserve is serious about this, the extent to which they would need to raise rates would have a very significant impact on us. So we are going to put a lot of pressure on them to try to make sure that they don't do that. And I think, you could argue that they shouldn't be listening to that. But I think we've long passed the point where I think the Federal Reserve is listening to a lot of things that have, and taking into consideration a lot of things that have nothing to do with their actual mandate.
I agree, and that was, I guess that was my point. My point is that I think we've reached a point where the Federal Reserve isn't focused solely on the U.S., but on the global globalization that we're seeing, and to a certain respect, it's listen. I don't think we can go back to where the Federal Reserve can really control any of the things that we're talking about anymore, because their balance sheet is so huge that if they begin to truly reduce their balance sheet and raise rates, that's an enormous amount of money coming out of the market. And again, that's the stipulation I'm saying. In other words, I think we all agree that the inflation we're seeing, I think, is a supply side inflation. It's not an economic boom inflation, right? The inflation we saw in the stock market that happened since 2008 to today is free money, right, by the Federal Reserve, $8 trillion balance sheet. So if they begin to raise rates, pull money in, I mean, they've stopped buying. They're going to stop buying. Tapering means they're going to stop buying. They're talking about pulling money out, meaning selling. Right? So if they begin to sell, right, they're pulling literally a lot more money out of the market. That's where the big risk comes in, because if they pull money out of the market, it's literally coming out of the market. It's not somehow or other attached to the economy. It's taking money out of bonds, which makes interest rates go up, which means that other people now what? If interest rates start to go, think about it. If rates start to go up to 3 to 4%, which I don't think they will, but let's say they go to 3 or 4%, what do you think is going to happen? There's a lot of senior citizens that had value stocks and saying, I am now leaving my value stock that was giving me 2 to 3% dividend
to go
into bonds that are going to pay me 4%.
What happens to stock markets?
Right? Yeah. So all that is what I'm, I guess, alluding to the fact that what they do has nothing to do with the economy, has a lot to do with the stock market.
The stock market.
Yeah.
Which I think the takeaway for me, like if you're the average investor, is like you need, not that it will happen, because it could very well be that they're going to take these things into consideration, the Federal Reserve, and basically they talk a big game, but they won't do any of these things.
Yeah.
But you need to also be prepared for what the world looks like when the easy money spigot gets turned off. And that's a hard thing to do, because we haven't seen that world for, let's see, so 2008 to 2022. What's that, 14 years?
Yeah.
We haven't seen that world for 14 years. We haven't seen a world in which the Federal Reserve does anything other than easy money. I mean, there was a little blip. They raised rates like, a few times, 2017, 2018. Yeah. But they didn't, to my knowledge, I don't think they tapered. And once the pandemic hit, they went
all out.
Full hog at him. But I mean, we haven't seen a sustained world of contractionary monetary policy, of the Federal Reserve doing what we're talking about, selling, for 14 years. So there's going to be a lot of investors in the market that don't know what that world looks like.
So what's it going to look like?
So I think it's a world in which the stock market does not have these little dips and then goes right back up and the Federal Reserve says something. Like, it's a world in which you need to be prepared to navigate, I think, contractions a little bit more, a world in which you have to navigate. There could be those, think about it. Last year, we worry about last year not being a great year, and at no point last year did anything go down, did any index go down more than 5%. So you sit there and say, we may have to navigate as an investor what that world looks like, if indeed the Federal Reserve goes down this road, because that used to happen a lot. I mean, prior in 2000s, you're not used to that happening.
So Jerry, to answer your question, it's one really never knows, right? So the expectation, what I proposed before or projected before is a slow process, right? Because interest rates aren't going to go to 4% in a week, right? They will go to 4% in a long period of time, and the expectation is that at that point people say, well, okay, I need to get out, right? The issue is the psychology of the marketplace, as you know, and we all know it doesn't work that way, right? At the expectations, if the Fed truly begins to sell and people say, this is not a one-time event, they're serious about it, you're going to see a lot more people get out of the stock market quicker because they see the outcome, right? In other words, you're looking into the future, say, what's going to happen then? And you don't want to be the last guy out. You want to be the first guy out. The first guy out comes out, then the second guy, and before you know it, everybody's bundling in, right? But certainly as investors, what you have to just make sure that you have is again, you don't want to be invested all in one particular sector or one particular stocks or three stocks. You need to be well diversified in a situation where if there is a particular downtrend in any sector of the marketplace, the other part of your portfolio is holding up very well, right? And the fixed income market, we're going to see.
Is this a time when people who maybe abandoned bonds should at least give it a second thought?
So in the fixed income market, yes, I mean, think about it. I mean, short-term rates most likely will begin to rise. I mean, we already see a 2-year at 1%, right? And the Fed hasn't done a thing. So it's already expecting you to raise rates at least 4 times. So
Told you.
it's already done. It's already done, right? So from that perspective, you can buy short-term fixed income. The chances of that raise, the price of that going up a lot is small, but you're not going to lose a lot of money, right? So it's a great place to be in there. Now, the other thing about fixed income is that maybe for the next year or so, there'll be some pressure on prices of bonds. But think about it. Over the next 12 to 14 months, if rates go up, now you will be receiving more interest, right?
Yeah.
So you'll be in the right place at the right time, right? So it's a great place to be as a protection against something terrible happening in the stock market, where at least you are now getting paid for a little bit, right? And the risk is not great. So that's I mean, but it's a balance.
I was going to say, because something you may like, so Jerry's in the back over there asking questions, is that early in 2020, an investor was on all the Reddit different ones, because there was a whole bunch of them. It wasn't just the Wall Street Bros. There was a whole, and one of them, he said he found something that was really interesting, which is that everyone in the group kept saying they won't let the market go down. As in they, capital They, they won't let the market go down. So now we're going to have to enter a phase in which if they start or as in like everyone who's investing start realizing that they may let the market go down, that will change their behavior. It will change their behavior a lot too, because then you may start looking. I mean, if you're one of these guys that invested in, again, just use Plug Power as an example, like you invested it at $1 because you're like, man, this is going to go to the moon, or you're a Tesla, one of those Tesla guys that you made, 40,000 on Tesla, and you're looking, you're like, it may retract now because it's going to be really hard for the stock market, and Tesla is maybe a little bit overpriced. You're going to sell. You're going to take your gains. Even if it's just part of your gains, some people are going to start doing that, and then we're going to enter a different market period where people aren't just going to be like buy and hold forever because it's the future, because it may get a little bit too bumpy on the way there, that you'll pull a little bit out and then play something else or do something else or be more cautious, because at the point at which you realize that they actually may do it, they may let the market go down, it's going to change your behavior.
I agree.
I also was going to say contact a trusted advisor, because 5 years ago, we were talking. There were articles from top guys saying that this was the end of inflation. We'd never see inflation again. Here it is. So if you did your financial plan 5 years ago and thought you were all set, and now all of a sudden you're worried about inflation, this is why we run them every year, every 2 years. And
this is why we put inflation in ours, even when inflation was at zero.
We fire test it too. Xavier and I put financial plans through the ringer to make sure that they're as strong as can be, because
inflation is a
this
killer.
can happen.
It's a killer.
The inflation is always the hardest, is the one thing that is the worst.
It's
for people
too important to
retire.
assume the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This
has been fun. Yeah, thank you.
It's been a good one.
Thank you guys for
thanks for coming on, Nick.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Chatting with us. This is a great day. I always love to den the passion. You can tell that Nick likes what he does as well, and then having Dallas here was a lot of good times. Good times. One of the reasons I really enjoy today, Mañana. Next week, another fantastic guest. We're going to have on again Jeff Tamrath is coming back from Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash. He's going to just talk some business with us, talk some shop, see how things are going, and just check in with him. So that'll be a great time.
That'll be good. Yeah, I enjoyed
guest.
chatting with Jeff. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely on the show. So just really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate being on this fantastic set. Thank you, Judah, behind the camera. Thank you, Jerry. Jerry here, always asking some great questions, always making us think.
Yeah, live
always
audience
making us
questions.
think with the live audience.
I'm just sad there was nothing from Kevin Higgins. I like, Kevin, you got to get on the ball. We need a question for next week. Yeah.
There that's the mission for Kevin, is to get us a question for next week. And and always appreciate our partners, that we're always proud to be powered by, of course, GBS Financial Services, CVille Picnic, Aqua CVille Hand Car Wash, and of course, Sirius Craddock Insurance with Miguel, and Vitae Spirits, as always. And of course, we are presented by Emergent Financial Services, and we are always partnering with Adelante, the premier Latino networking group here in Charlottesville, Virginia. We always thank you, our audience, for watching us. Thanks for the great comments today for Dallas. Really appreciate watching the show. Great. Be sure to send us any comments, questions, anything you want us to cover, anyone you want us to have on. Be sure to like and share today's show, and just thank you all for watching, and we will see you next week. But until then, hasta mañana.